Well, greetings, PPL family. I'm Paul Williams, President and CEO of Project for Pride in Living. Welcome to the Race, Place, and Policy podcast, our new podcast here at PPL. PPL has been building communities and building success through affordable housing and career training for 50 years now. And welcome to this workspace where we're building community and building success through dialogue in particular. We hope that this is a lively discussion with lots of ideas. We think that this can't happen without including conversations about race, place, and policy in that discussion. So we thank you for joining us, and we hope you'll also be part of this discussion on an ongoing basis. This month, our conversation is about neighborhood vitality, the importance of place. How do we enrich and empower neighborhoods to be strong and safe? I'm joined by Sondra Samuels, the founder and CEO of the Northside Achievement Zone, or NAZ, as some call it. Welcome, Sondra. Excited to have you with us.
Oh, thank you, Paul. It's great to be with you anytime.
Fabulous. Well, I so appreciate you taking time to join us, and I've known you and admired you for many, many years now. But I want to start actually just by, I'm curious to have you share a bit about your background. How did you come to this work? And what fueled your passion for community?
Yeah, so Paul, I was born in New Jersey, Newark, New Jersey, same hospital as Whitney Houston and Queen Latifah. Queen Latifah, I can rap, I can't sing.
I've heard you sing.
Yes, I can rap, can't sing. And but you know, our community, my family, you know, Jim Crow South, my mother from South Carolina, my father from Georgia, moving up north with the great migration. And with the promise of the northern cities, and then all of the racism, and the Newark had its own violent summer and race riots in the 60s as well. And when fair housing legislation opened, our family was able to leave the inner city and move to the suburbs. And then I integrated a white school in the suburbs. And when we moved on the block, we were the first Black family. And I'd say 5 years later, there was only one white family left, right? So the white flight is real. But anyway, I said, and then I went to 2 historically Black colleges and universities. But the thing that really, the kind of the pivotal moment for me, Paul, was when a young African-American friend of mine, we were about 13, 14, Butch, was murdered. And it was community violence, and Butch was just a cut up, wasn't in a gang, though some of his friends were. His dad was a cop. Butch was just in the wrong place at the wrong time. And I remember that was my first moment because, you know, after Butch got killed, I was like, okay, so we're going to stop everything, right? Because Butch is dead. And we're going to figure out how this doesn't happen again. That's what my 14, 13-year-old mind was saying. And, you know, the wake happened, the funeral happened, and then, you know, some tears got shed. Everybody said, this is senseless. By the way, this is the same process we go through today, right? And nothing changed, and life went on. And I couldn't understand why life didn't stop. But anyway, that put me on this journey, Paul, to understand inner city violence, racism, you know, what did it mean? You know, how did we come to this? I mean, I was just on a journey. And, but I moved to the Twin Cities to work for Ford Motor Company in marketing after getting my MBA. But I spent a lot of my free time in North Minneapolis volunteering, finally did Peace Corps, all in Africa, all in this search, Paul, for meaning and understanding of what was happening in our inner cities in America, right? And then came back, did AmeriCorps, and still grappling with it, but understanding that there were places in this country where justice just wasn't happening, and that Black folks were unfairly impacted by it. And so finally, when I moved back to Minnesota, it just made all of this came together, and my husband and we decided to live in North Minneapolis, not to fix North Minneapolis, but to be part of to be part of the energy that was already happening here, to be part of the tapestry of self-improvement and development alongside our neighbors. And many older folks told us that they prayed us there. But that really, and so Paul, for both my husband and my family, that's been who we've been on the North Side as neighbors. In fact, I call my neighbors nenes. And we and we constantly are thinking through what do we need to do. So when an issue is presented to us, we're leaning into how do we address it as neighbors.
Well, and I think that's so powerful. And I've certainly known that about you and Don and your commitment, and very much actually reflects our founder, Joe Salvaggio's commitment. Joe in the 70s, said, I'm moving into the neighborhood.
Yes.
Right. And literally lived in that South Minneapolis neighborhood, the central neighborhood, for his entire life. And there is something powerful. That is the community in community development. Yes. Right. And it has everything to do with your nenes, as you call them. I love that. Can you talk a little bit? I know that I want to hear more about kind of the NAS model and how NAS came to be. But particularly, I know you started your work kind of, I think at the time it was called the Peace Foundation. Yeah. And just kind of talk about the evolution from Peace Foundation into the NAS model.
Yeah. So, Peace Foundation, Public Engagement, Community Empowerment. It was started in about 2003 by Don and my husband and Michelle Martin. Right. And the whole idea was that, what was happening in North Minneapolis was not a North Minneapolis problem. Right. It was created by our city, by our state. Right. And so then the solution couldn't be, you can't just say those people right there need to fix that when there's so many things that we didn't cause. And so that was the idea, that we would build this movement of folks, not just in North Minneapolis, but in the neighboring communities, to say the sum of us, right, that we all win when we all win. And many folks leaned in. But anyway, so worked on ending violence. So that was the thing. Like, we moved here. And in fact, Paul, when Don and I moved into the neighborhood from a Dale Selby area in St. Paul, we didn't have any children yet. And I picked out this room to be our baby's room, right? Because I was anxious to have a baby. And that's going to be when we are pregnant, that's the room. And next thing you know, one night we're downstairs and we hear bam. And like we're moving from Selby Dale, right? And we just did not hear gunshots in the area I was in, Paul, like with any kind of, we just didn't. And so we didn't know it was a gunshot. And later we go upstairs and we see that the window was, a bullet had come through and hit the back wall of what would have been our child's room if we had had children. And we said, time to organize, right? We're in the right place. So that's when we started. That was the beginning of our working on the violence of North Minneapolis, right? In the attendant causes. But then as we kept doing it and kept burying young people and having vigils and having marches and creating Northside Youth Stand Up and going to the Capitol, and we would see violence ebb and flow. But it'd be up one year, down one year, up one year, and it was like, we realized that violence was not the problem, but it was a symptom of a greater problem, and that we needed to get to the root. And so we had already started noticing that all the kids who were murdered, many of them who were murdered, not all, but for sure, the young people who were committing the murders, their educational outcomes were tragic. And many times their family situations around housing and jobs and so on was also tragic. And so we started seeing this theme. So when we heard about the Harlem Children's Zone that was looking at a place, Central Harlem, 10,000 kids, this certain Central Harlem, certain number of blocks, that they were focused there to give all of those kids what they needed to become middle class, we thought that is the solution to violence right there.
And so really you built the NAS model off of that Harlem Children's Zone
Yes.
model.
Yes.
And can you just describe kind of the core components of NAS? What are kind of the key strategies, I guess?
Yeah, the big one. And Paul, I just want to say, one of the key strategies is having partners like PPL and leaders like you who are partnered with us. And PPL has been part of NAS since the very beginning. But it is a holistic, comprehensive, place-based approach to ending local violence and supporting families as they lift themselves out of poverty, ending multi-generational poverty through education of children. Like education has always been what we've known is the ticket to the middle class and to, right, the life that we all want for our children, but then whole family supports, because a child comes from a home, right? And so you want to make sure that home is stable. And so the way we do NAS to end poverty, to end multi-generational poverty, focused on education and whole family support, is by a collaborative of like 30 partners. PPL is one, in both housing and jobs. You of course, you all fall in both those categories, but our partners are in housing, jobs, health, early childhood, K through 12, after school, summer, colleges, and then we do a whole host of parenting education classes. And the whole idea, Paul, is to wrap around families. And we target African-American low-income families in North Minneapolis, in this place, right? To wrap them around with supports, and we help them to focus on their child's education, while we also partner with the institutions that are educating kids to make sure they are high quality. And we've been doing it for 11 years now, and we've had amazing outcomes. And I will tell you, it's not enough.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and so much captured in there. And again, your PPL has been a partner really from the get-go. And I know certainly Steve Kramer and PPL, prior to my coming to PPL, were very involved early on. Just again, kind of helping, kind of strengthen the organization as it was kind of evolving and growing. And we've been involved in the housing side in particular for quite some time, both in terms of helping you all administer some of your kind of rental assistance dollars and helping families stay in their homes, as well as find existing homes. And then more recently, we've really expanded that role to include new housing developments that we're making available to NAS families. And then a couple years back, also took on a stronger role in employment and training and helping NAS families kind of access different training opportunities, and now are expanding even into financial education and kind of wealth building strategies and potentially getting into home ownership and things like that. So it's been a robust partnership. And again, I've been so impressed with the 30 some different partners. Can you talk a little bit about kind of the backbone function? And again, this is more just helping our listeners understand the structure, and how do those partners work together? And then talk just a little bit about NAS's role as the backbone of that collaborative effort.
Yeah, Paul. And, I think this is the strength of the Northside Achievement Zone. And it is what nationally, and Paul, you were just part of a site visit by a national organization that does major funding of place-based efforts. I don't know if people in North Minneapolis realize that we are on the map nationally. Mm-hmm. When people say, how do we do this? They look to us. And so, and it's because of our partnership. What we learned early on was that you can't lead a collaborative collaboratively. Somebody has to wake up, eating, sleeping, drinking, pooping, how we move, right? Gotta keep it real.
Right, yeah, that's very real.
How we move this collaborative forward. Somebody's got to do it, because all of the partners, Paul, you have your own board, your own mission, your own values, your own strategic plan, your own employees, your own fundraising to do. So we had to create this thing, and that's what a backbone does. It allows an organization to say, we get the picture of the whole and how important the whole is. And so the mere parts, which we are all a part of, that's not, or not, I'm not going to say that's not, it's both and. That's important, but the whole is extremely important because our families don't come in pieces. But anyway, as a backbone, what we do to provide that kind of agency of our network is we do a couple core things. One, we convene all the meetings, right? We make sure we have shared communication. We have a shared data system. We have one called the Link. Many of our partners utilize it. And if they don't utilize it directly, they send us the data to put in it. Shared data is critical. We have all come together and agreed on a mission. We've all said, everybody's agreed, no matter what their organization is, that we're going to work together because Northside families and children should succeed. And we too want to end multi-generational poverty. We do most of the analysis of how the collaborative is. We do all of the analysis of how the collaborative is doing. We work on policy, not in systems change, not just NAS Central. There is no NAS without our partners. So it's, what are the policies our partners are working on? What kind of things can we move forward? Education is big for us as a core. But certainly, Paul, we want to partner with you around housing and have done so in all of the different key areas. So it's really the policy, the convening, the communications, the data, the evaluation, and we have a real focus on racial equity in terms of our partners. You have to share, you got to at least share the values of your partners. Mm-hmm. And that's one core value. And I know that's central to PPL.
Yeah, it really is. It really is. Well, I want to just talk a little bit more about, again, that place-based focus and the comprehensiveness of the approach, and the recent NAS strategic plan, which you all just adopted, really deepens the commitment to place to the neighborhood. So why is that important? And a kind of a question, a little bit of a devil's advocate question. Do you think it's a stretch to single out an entire neighborhood for change?
Yeah, that's.
I mean, how can one initiative, kind of take responsibility for, this entire Northside community?
Right. So Paul, I'm so glad. I love that you asked that question. So, we intuitively knew, and we saw Harlem Children's Zone having wild success at it. They said our stomping ground is Central Harlem, full stop. And we see there is no black-white achievement gap in Harlem any longer, especially in Central Harlem. There is not. So we know, just like other people got people on the moon like us, when we knew that somebody got people on the moon, if they can do it in Harlem, we can do it in North Minneapolis, right? Just straight up. But anyway, here's the place-based thing so this has been years, it's been decades. But that, the Harlem Children's Zone is like 25 years old now, right? We're 10 plus years. But what really put placemaking, I think, and Paul, you tell me, because you've been at this game a long time, on a national level in terms of people willing to fund it, is the research of Dr. Raj Chetty. And Raj has won all kinds of prizes. I think he won the Nobel Prize, I'm not sure. But he and a collection of researchers for years looked at neighborhoods, and they looked at children in those neighborhoods, and they did longitudinal analysis of kids from different neighborhoods, and they mapped the whole country. And they mapped how their earning power 15, 20 years later, right? 20 years later, their earning power. Mm-hmm. And what they found was, and you can look up opportunity maps, and you can plug in your zip code, and it will tell you how much children in your neighborhood will probably make in 20 years. And so they did this around the country. And at first, what they landed, and these are the smartest people, okay? Everybody's listening to these really smart people. What they landed on, and Raj Chetty led this, Dr. Chetty, was, okay, well, the kids born in these neighborhoods like North Minneapolis, low income, predominantly communities of color, disproportionately low income. Of course, we're not all low disproportionate communities of color, low educational attainment, things of that nature. The kids' outcomes are terrible. You can see a heat map. So his solution was, we need to take advantage and move these kids out to where the outcomes for kids who look like them are better. So public housing, for example, shouldn't focus on the inner cities where the outcomes are worse for kids. They should focus on the inner ring suburbs, because at least kids are doing a little bit better out there. So our thing was like, okay, Raj, we get that. So let's go ahead. If that is the game, then if we're going to really have equity, then what kids do we leave behind? So, because according to your theory, we need to just empty out North Minneapolis. We need to empty out Gary. We need to empty out Detroit. We need to empty out Newark, and I can go on. And Raj himself realized, you know what? It's not about moving the kids to another place. And sure, that's certainly a strategy. And we do that sometimes. It makes sense. But his thing was, we need to change the places where these kids are born and raised, right? And so focusing on place, and that, Paul, when that research got out, it like blew the lid off of the funding community, right? Yeah. And they started saying, oh my gosh, these outcomes are atrocious. And so we better help to transform the places instead of displacing the kids.
Yeah. What years was that research done?
Boy, Paul, I want to say it's about 10 years now.
Yeah. Well, and that very much, aligns with a lot of the experience, certainly that I had in my many years working across the country with LISC, Local Initiative Support Corporation, as well as in my experience working in core city neighborhoods here in the Twin Cities. If you remember John Powell et al., again, another,
yes.
Great the economist, sociologist, urban planner, John talked about the importance of creating communities of opportunity, yes. Right? And I grew up over in Rondo. I grew up at Selby and Dale. My grandfather's dental office was on the second story of the red brick building that's still there at Selby and Dale. Mm-hmm. So before you got there, I guarantee you there were bullet holes in a lot of windows in that area. But the whole notion was, why is it that my people always have to be moved out? Right. Why can't we create communities of opportunity here, right, without displacing our folk, right, and creating a genuine place of opportunity that has mobility and has choice, right, for those who do want to move to suburban areas and or other communities. Absolutely. We want to have that choice available to folks, but I also want this place, this neighborhood, to be a community of opportunity, because there are lots of folks who want to live on the North Side. The North Side is a beautiful neighborhood. It's beautiful, right? The housing stock on the North Side, outstanding. Parks and green space, outstanding. Vibrant people, outstanding. Kind of across the board, it is a community of opportunity, despite the challenges, right? Economically, despite the challenges in terms of the crime and the violence. And so I saw, early on in my travels across the country, and certainly in the work of PPL, I got out and actually saw Harlem Children's Zone, early on. Other great work was being done in the South Bronx, the Mid-South Bronx Desperados, in Bed-Stuy, Bed-Stuy Community Development Corporation, Indianapolis, Chicago. This notion of neighborhood-based comprehensive community development, right? Yes. Where the important piece of it is the importance of voice. Right. And for us at PPL, that's one of the things that we've always been so really valued so much about NAS, is that you all started with community voice, as a central tenet of what are we doing and how are we going to do it, right? That the importance of that backbone, having a lead entity that is wakes up every day, right, thinking and planning about how this needs to work. And then again, this notion of multiple strategies, right? Having, it's not enough just to build housing. I said this earlier, right? For a long time, community development was obsessed with
Right.
housing development, with
Right.
just building units of housing. We have to think about the multiple aligned strategies, and education, by the way, I think is what is unique about NAZ and Harlem Children's Zone, is the laser like focus on education. Not many of those comprehensive efforts across the country really focused on education first and foremost, right? It was the notion of, okay, let's do some job training, important. Let's revitalize the neighborhood, commercial corridor. Let's build affordable housing. Let's think about the green space. But when we really introduce kids and families into that, that is a really transformative strategy. And I think that's one of the things that really stands out for me about the NAZ model. So again, back to a little bit of that question about, boy, aren't we biting off too much here to take responsibility for the entire neighborhood? And in Minneapolis on the north side, and certainly in lots of neighborhoods, we're dealing with a real rise in crime and violence, a spike here in the last several years, even prior to George Floyd and the social unrest. How do we deal with all of that as a neighborhood challenge, or should we be leaving that to others? And I know you've been very active on the violence and the safety debates and dialogue, certainly on the north side, but throughout the city. What's your thought about that? Is it too big a hill to climb?
Right. And Paul, specifically around like other neighborhoods that are experiencing the same thing.
I'm just thinking about, talk about your role in combating that, and the role of NAZ in combating that, and should we be thinking about other ways of tackling the violence and the crime issues? And what have your learnings been as you've kind of been moving through that?
Yeah, Paul, I gotta tell you. So the number one thing, this is the thing, and you can put it on my tombstone when I die. I'll probably get cremated, but Paul, this whole thing around the sum of us, right? That this is not a zero-sum game. It is about, like, I believe the approach to what we're doing has to be that we do it together, across where we understand that and when you're collaborating, when you're coming together authentically, not just sitting in a meeting together, but coming together authentically, that 1 + 1 doesn't equal 2, 1 + 1 = 10, right? It is the power. And Paul, that is the thing. Like, it has always been think that the sum is greater than the parts. So when you talk about like approaching the issues of violence and so on, I don't have the answer. I think we all know that there are things that absolutely have to happen to make policing better. There are things that has to happen around many of the things that ail us. And I think it's only in us coming together, Paul, and figuring it out, right? And then demanding change. And that for me has been the power of the Northside Achievement Zone. Paul, I gotta tell you, I get embarrassed when I'm kind of held up as, this great leader of NAZ, when I know that all of y'all are standing, I'm only who I am because of who you are. Right. And so that might not have answered your question directly, but I know it is the way to the solution. And you can't bite off more if all of us are taking the same chomp. Right. I mean, that's the thing. One organization is taking on too much, but when you have this collective that's working, and Paul, you remember when, we could put the same thing around COVID. As a community, all of our partners started meeting weekly at first, then bi-weekly, then monthly. But in the midst of the COVID and the violence, we started coming together. What's happening in housing? What's happening for families? What's happening in housing? What's happening in jobs? What's happening in early childhood? What's happening in the schools? And like, what are you doing? What are you doing? What's the need? Right? We have to take that same approach to every situation that we face, including the violence.
Yeah, I love the way you put that. The sum is greater than the parts, and 1+1 doesn't just equal 2. It in fact equals 10. I got to say, we PPL's been very much aligned with NAS and kind of your approach. We talked to dozens of our residents in the weeks immediately following of the George Floyd killing and the racial unrest. And we asked our residents, what should we do about policing? Do you want more policing, less policing? Their response was, we want more and we want different.
Right. Better.
We want more and we want different.
Right.
And some of the things that PPL is doing right now with some of the other groups, especially on the South Side, coming together collaboratively, looking at alternative. We've been working with a group called Brothers Empowered. We've been working with a Black-owned security firm called Twin Cities Lawmen. And their approach is much more around walking, talking, being with our residents and our neighbors in our neighborhoods that we have buildings in and programs in. It's much more about engagement and much less about enforcement.
Right.
And we're seeing some exciting results out of that. And I think a lot of the work that you all have been doing with 21 Days of Peace and my goodness, you've had the vigils and the prayer services and folks walking out on the street. Again, it's a hard time. And you're right. You said earlier, it's a symptom of other things. And so just last question, lots of work to do, obviously. And even without the multiple pandemics, without the unrest and the continued kind of economic struggles, what do you prioritize that we have to get right now? What's kind of top of mind for you in terms of something that we need to get after in terms of the work of NAS and the neighborhood of North Minneapolis?
Yeah, because Paul, we're a collaborative that focuses on children and family, and again, seeing them as whole people, not that they come in pieces. So all of these needs that they have are embodied in one person, right? We have to treat them that way. And so two things. One, Paul, your organization excels at housing and jobs. That's what you do well. Do that and do it well. Right? Like we don't need to, we don't just do our core well. That's the thing that how we serve our families best. And the other thing though, is that we are in a crisis right now, and we are poised to lose a generation. And the COVID slide is real. The economic impact on our families that we serve in North Minneapolis, Paul, it's real. And this is a break the glass, pull the alarm moment. And I'm not sure if people are really hearing us, right? And so we're not going back to normal. So we have got to innovate, Paul, to accelerate outcomes for our kids, right? And to meet our families where they are. We have got to innovate. It's like, we got to do it. And there are many things, many ways. I mean, we were forced to innovate and go online. Like, Paul, I know much of your training and things of that is now online, which didn't happen before. Telehealth. You and I are on the board of Health Partners. They had been talking about telehealth for years, even when I joined the board. And then finally, there was no other choice but to jump over the cliff, because it was like, you got to go to telehealth now. And so we are being forced to innovate, Paul. We can't do things the way we did them yesterday, because that's not the world we live in right now. And so it's doing what we do and doing that well, and looking continuously, Paul, looking for the ways we need to innovate to meet our times.
It's fabulous, Sondra, and I just so appreciate your perspective and your time and your presence. Really does matter. I know we could keep talking about this, and this is just the tip of the iceberg, but glad we could share some of your insights and some of our collective work with our listeners. And to all of you who've joined us, thank you for listening in. I'm Paul Williams, CEO at Project for Pride Living, and this has been the Race, Place, and Policy podcast. We'd love to hear what you think about the series. Drop us a note at communications@ppl-inc.org. Give us some of your thoughts, some of your ideas on what you'd like to hear about in upcoming sessions. We hope you'll subscribe and sign up for notifications from wherever you get your podcasts. And again, you can always find us on our website at ppl-inc.org. Until next time, be well, and thank you so much.